Hi, it's me again, Norma Shephard, director of the Mobile Millinery Museum and author of 1000 Hats. Today, I want to do a little hat chat about hats that have their original hang tag. Every collector knows that once you begin to acquire a lot of whatever it is you're collecting, you begin to have sub-collections. We know that three of anything constitutes a collection, so when it comes to hats, there are so many different sub-collections that you can specialize in or happen across. So hats with their original hang tags is what I want to talk about today. I'm going to show you, I did dedicate a segment in my book, 1000 Hats, um, to special collections. And one of those special collections was a number of hats um, donated to our museum from the estate of Aileen Banting, who was a portrait artist. Now, her hats came to us, over 200 of them, with many of them with their original hang tags. So I don't want you to assume that when you find a hat with its original tag that it wasn't purchased or worn. Some people did take those tags and tuck them up under the hat. Aileen Banting's daughter-in-law told us that Aileen didn't remove tags from any of her hats. She must have always had it in her mind that her hats would go to a museum. Many of them were beautiful couture pieces, and so we're grateful to have them. I'll show you a few that I featured in the book, 1000 Hats. Um, this collection here, you can see the turban at the bottom has its original Schiaparelli label, and it looks like it also has a paper hang tag, which had the price. This, she purchased it on sale for $12.49. She was careful with her money, frugal, even though she bought hundreds of hats, and we actually fell heir to, probably a couple hundred of her beautiful shoes as well, which are featured in my book, In Step with Fashion, 200 Years of Shoe Style. And I'll put links to the hat book and the shoe book in the description box for this video. But the original price was $25 in the 1960s for this beautiful Schiaparelli piece. What's interesting about collecting hats with their original tags is that it gives you, hat collecting can be a bit of a mystery and it's fun to solve, but it does give you a clue as to the era, the price, the maker, maybe the shop where it was sold. And if you compare them as you find them on different random hats, you'll see that they give you a lot of information about the graphic art and the sort of aesthetic of each era. So it's a bit of a, just like hat boxes, they're a bit of a history of retail as well. So I want to show you this first hat. This is a lampshade style, a very plush long nap beaver. Circa 1968 would have been worn at the back of the head and extended out this way. Its original tag is cardstock, as so many of them were, attached to the hat with white string. The label, this is a Montreal hat. The label is Elmo Hat Montreal. So the maker has put in a little style number that she would understand, and the price on this hat, $19.95. So circa 1968. I can remember my mother doing probably a week's worth of groceries for $20. So that's roughly compared to the price of this hat. Another hat with its original tag is this cloth beauty. This one is a fabric hat. It's got the floppy brim, almost sort of a bucket style, but with a much deeper brim than we would think of on bucket hats today. It is lined in satin and has its original hang tag. And this is a much bigger tag, also cardstock. Oh, and some really nice graphics on that. The label on this one is Caroline, style number 951. And oh wow, the price on this one was $42. Interesting. Uh, if you think back, a lot of the hats weren't just made by hand at your millinery salon. Um, there were a lot of hat factories. In fact, in the 1960s, I spoke to the owner of one former Toronto hat factory who told me that in her day there were a good 30 hat factories in Toronto alone, and similarly in other major cities. Now, this next one hails from the 1940s, and this is quite an interesting piece. We're looking at a beret here, a very dressy beret. It's made from a quality beaver felt, and I love the way this design has been imprinted or stamped or blocked into the felt itself. It almost looks like the effect you might get if you were making a really fancy pie crust. There is a hat style called pie crust, but those usually, pie crust hat has pieces of felt removed, looking very much like an open pie crust. You can see the bow trimming on the front and also at the center back, and then the grosgrain band to match. As I said, this is from the 1940s. It would have sat, you could kind of tilt it over the brow, or it would sit a little far back on the head. Again, a paper tag, a much smaller tag, and this one says it's snappy, the hat of tomorrow. So they're trying to create a really nice, forward-thinking, modern aesthetic at the time. I'm not sure I can interpret the writing on the back of this, but this is another, it has a spot for a size, but this hat has not been sized, and it's another hat from Montreal. So many of our pieces are. This one, we're going to the 1960s with this one, the early 1960s. It has a sort of a turban effect, but it would not hug your head like you would typically think of a turban. This one is going to sit quite on top of your head, much like a crown. I love the fabric in this. It's very tinsely. It reflects the light, which is really, really cool. And this has been beautifully shaped by hand. It's an anonymous maker, a little bit of satin trim there. We actually have two other hats in the collection with similar tinsely looking fabric, one in gold, one in silver. And I think these would have been quite appropriate and showy to wear in the Christmas season, perhaps to a concert or even to church. Very, very nice. Maybe the silver one might have been more for New Year's Eve. This one I can see was sold for $14.95, and the tag is a cute hat. I love the graphics on this. Even though the hat is from the 1960s, the drawing on this, the sketch on this, sort of hails to more of a 40s look. So that's really cool. Another Montreal hat. And there actually was a company called the Montreal Hat Company. This next one amuses me a little bit. It is a little cap, a green felt that is just trimmed across the brow with an assortment, of these feathers. And the tag, I'll let you have a look at that. Action in hats. Hats for outdoor living, swinging, youthful, jaunty. Well, this hat doesn't really say that to me, and maybe that's why this one was never sold, perhaps. I mean, outdoorsy, sure, it's a felt cap, but it certainly doesn't, it doesn't say, this was called play toppers. So maybe that was some marketing that doesn't quite work for me. As much as I love hats, there's a few that I question. Although I always say that I never met a hat I didn't like. This next one I think is really fun. This is certainly from the mod era. The these gorgeous big circles, polka dots, contrasting. They used to say that blue and green should never be seen. Well, I think they decided in the 60s that that was outdated and it should be seen. This is an Eaton's hat, Eaton's Fashions. It's a bubble toque, could have been worn over a beehive hairdo. And we begin to see quite a difference in the tag now. Of course, this was a hat you would purchase retail at a department store. And, let's have a look at this. Remember these tags, anybody? So this one was sold for, which way does it go? Oh, for $10.98. And this would have been sort of mid 1960s, Eaton's Canada Shopping Centre. Price tag not to be removed for exchange. Well, it certainly wasn't exchanged. She kept it. She kept the tags. Aileen's daughter-in-law told us that Aileen would wear the hats with the tag tucked up underneath. So, as I mentioned, she had always intended for these beautiful pieces, which she bought for gallery openings and different social events like that with her art career, and probably only wore them once, and intended to have them preserved in a museum. So we were really, really happy to fall heir to those. It wasn't just hats that were sold with little price tags, also the trimmings. I mean, you could certainly make your own hats and trim them yourself, or change the trims on a hat. This little rose, this little fabric rose, sold for 39 cents at Eaton's, probably in the late 50s or early 60s. Now another sweet little piece. This hails from Hamilton, and not a surprise because this is where Aileen Banting hailed from, and the Liberty Shop was one of several really popular hat stores in Hamilton. This was made by Leslie Monroe, and this has a, Paris and New York label, but shopkeepers, of course, would import hats as well and then have their own shop label tags. So Liberty Women's Wear Hamilton, so it sold more than hats, this shop, and this tag has been torn in half, not sure why, but the original little cardstock tag also tells the model number, model 104. And this is a sweet little bandeau, if you're wondering. I think of these hats, this is from the 1950s, and I think of these hats as little Lucy hats. If you've watched I Love Lucy, Lucy and Ethel, and all the mischief that they got up to, they were always fashionably dressed, and so I refer to these as little Lucy hats. More correctly, it's a bandeau. Now, the label on the next hat is a little different because this label is from a secondary market. I have talked about this hat before, but more precisely, the designer of this hat, and I will link the description to that video, or I'll link that video in the description box of this one. So if you want to learn more about this particular hat, you can. But the tag, which is what we're talking about today, this is from a vintage shop called The Edit in Hamilton, Ontario. So this hat is from the 1940s originally. It's in beautiful condition, certainly in wearable condition. The interior is just as nice as the exterior. It would have been a pricey hat when it was first made. It's made from Milan straw, sewn in concentric circles. It's just a beauty. And this sold in modern day, less than 10 years ago, I came across this hat in this vintage shop for $50. So that just goes to show you a well-made hat can stand the test of time. And many collectors certainly do well buying and selling vintage hats. So As I've been asked to do and I like to do, I will mention a little bit about the hat I'm wearing now that we've talked labels and tags. This one is just a simple little inexpensive, what I would call a Mad Hatter. And it too probably hails from about 10 years ago, maybe 2010. It was given to me as a birthday gift. Pale pink Mad Hatter. Doesn't budge, fits beautifully, light as a feather. So that's it for today's hat chat. I'm posting Mondays and Thursdays, so find me again. If you enjoyed this video, please hit like, subscribe. Let me know in the comments if you're a collector or if you're interested in vintage fashion history, what topics you'd like me to cover, and I would be happy to do so. So thank you for watching. Have a great hatty day.